Rebirth, the choice that changed everything. I was reborn to the moment before the car crash explosion. And this time, I ignored Sam's desperate cries for help. Instead, I chose to save his quiet, reserved older brother. Julia, why didn't you save me this time? Sam, trapped in the driver's seat, looked at me in disbelief. I glanced at him and coldly sneered in my heart. Everyone knew I admired Sam. In my previous life, I saved him, and out of obligation for my life-saving act, he had no choice but to marry me. But after the wedding, he despised me, believing I had manipulated him into marriage and taken advantage of his debt of gratitude. Together with his beloved first love, he had me locked up in a mental institution. It wasn't until my death that I realized forced love was never meant to work. In this life, I chose to stay away from him, but when I married his older brother, Sam lost his mind. Chapter 1. After sending Eric to the hospital for treatment, Sam was also rescued by his beloved Luna. He was lucky, suffering only minor scrapes. Seeing me anxiously running over, he disdainfully rolled his eyes and smirked coldly. You say you don't care about me, but aren't you following me like a dog? Sister, even if you want to catch Sam's attention, you shouldn't joke about Sam's life. If I hadn't arrived in time, Sam might not have been so fortunate. Luna glanced at me sideways, as if she wanted to throw herself onto Sam. Her face was full of mockery towards me, but her words were all about taking credit. She is my father's illegitimate daughter, and we've been at odds since we were children. Unfortunately, we fell for Sam at the same time. We each wish the other dead. I hurried to find a doctor to learn about Eric's condition. Not wanting to deal with him, as I brushed past him, someone grabbed my hand forcefully. Sam's brow furrowed slightly, the smile on his lips disappearing in an instant. Still pretending? Keep it up and I'll end up marrying Luna. Remembering how they had me thrown into a mental institution and tortured to death in a past life, the rage in my heart was unstoppable. I stared at his arrogant demeanor and said coldly, "Whatever, you?" Sam's eyes tightened in surprise for a moment. After scrutinizing my face for a while, he mocked me with a laugh. Just be tough. Just don't cry when it happens. The sound of hurried footsteps approached. Sam's father rushed to the hospital, relieved to find that both brothers were safe. Julia, you have been kind to our family, and our families have been friends for generations. Don't worry. I will make sure this boy marries you. Sam's father thanked me sincerely. No, I don't want to marry Sam. Before I could finish, Sam scoffed. A mocking smile crept across his lips. I knew you were trying to exploit my parents' gratitude to pressure me. Enough with the act. If you're not marrying me, are you planning to marry my brother, that blockhead? His voice seemed to snort from his nostrils, filled with disdain. He had always looked down on Eric. He never respected him, whether in public or private. Sam's father also thought Eric lacked presence and couldn't carry the family name, and he didn't value him much. But I knew that Eric wasn't as useless as they thought. Sam, stop teasing Julia. Girls are sensitive. She is a legitimate young lady. Marrying you would be a step up for us. Sam's father's expression darkened. He glanced meaningfully at Luna. Her status as an illegitimate daughter did not impress Sam's father. Sam! The humiliation made Luna feel incredibly wronged. Her face pale, her eyes red with tears. She helplessly shrank behind Sam. Dad, don't be too harsh. Sam couldn't stand to see her look so aggrieved. He quickly glared at me, his demeanor arrogant. I might marry you, but if we have kids, it has to be through IVF. And we must use Luna's eggs. Chapter 2. I almost laughed from anger. My expression suddenly turned cold, and my scornful gaze swept over them. Such wishful thinking. Where do you get the nerve? Luna thought I was talking about her, and instantly tears began to flow. Luna, don't cry. With me here, no one can bully you. Although I agree to marry Julia, my heart has always been with you. Sam was so distressed that he hurried to kiss her tears away. Yet, his sidelong glances towards me carried a warning. Tired of their affection, I turned and ran up to the second floor, but the nurse informed me that Eric had already been discharged. Ever since Eric's mother died in the hospital, he's been very averse to them. It was already a big step for him to come here to get bandaged at your urging. Sam's father also followed. He wasn't surprised by this news. He just looked at me thoughtfully, as if he had understood something, unable to see Eric. I had no choice but to head home. Underneath my building, I saw Sam's flashy red sports car. He was pressing Luna against the hood, kissing her passionately. All the estate is with my sister. You have to make sure you get it for me after marrying her and then divorce her to marry me. Don't make me wait as long as last life. Luna wrapped her arms around his neck, her eyes sultry. But Sam seemed somewhat distracted. We'll see. Hearing this, I sharply inhaled. They had been reborn too. I calmed myself and quickly walked past them. The sound of their ambiguous kissing paused for a moment, and Sam's voice clearly reached my ears. Luna, how about I give you the sports car? Really? You're so good to me. I remembered. Shortly after we got married in the last life, it was because he gave this car to Luna that I got jealous and smashed the car with a stone. Sam used that as an excuse to claim I was insane and forcibly sent me to a mental institution. I frowned and continued walking. Sam suddenly grabbed me, staring intently into my eyes. Julia, I'm giving the car to Luna. What do you think? That color suits her well, I said without thinking, smiling. Hearing this, Sam's face changed, and after a long silence, he spoke with suppressed anger. There's a dinner at the company next week. I'm allowing you to be my date. I scoffed, forcefully pulled my hand away, and stepped into the courtyard. I'm busy. I'll see how long you can keep this up. He was so angry he was jumping, but it didn't affect my mood. In fact, I was somewhat looking forward to next week's banquet. Chapter 3. Typically, Eric would definitely attend such a banquet. On the day of the banquet, I made an extra effort to dress up and arrived early at the banquet hall to look for Eric. As soon as I entered the venue, I felt a piercing gaze on me. Before I could look around, Sam's arrogantly mocking voice rang out next to my ear. TSKS. You said you wouldn't come, and yet here you are. What should I say about you? Saying one thing but meaning another? Sam was chatting with a group of friends and his eyes lit up the moment he saw me. I couldn't hear what he whispered to Luna by his side. Luna glared at me resentfully before leaving unwillingly. Miss, you really are hard to shake off. Ha. Maybe in the future our Sam will be under his wife's thumb. Seeing this, the wealthy young men around us teased. I pushed them away irritably and said sharply, back off. I'm not here for him. Ha. Dressed up like that and you say you're not here for me. Who else could it be? All right. I know you're shy, so I'll graciously allow you to be my date. Sam glanced at me mockingly and extended his hand as if bestowing charity. His friends burst out laughing as if I were a clown. Even the best temper would wear thin. I stopped in my tracks, turned around, and headed back. If you can't understand plain speech, go see a doctor. I said I'm not here for you. Stop flattering yourself. Everyone knows a gentleman can only bring one lady as his date. You insist on me being your date. What about Luna? Can you bear to see her kicked out by security? My voice wasn't loud, but it was just enough for Luna nearby to hear. Already feeling aggrieved, she burst into tears upon hearing my words. Sam opened his mouth to respond but couldn't find the words. Sam, can you really bear it? A strong sense of humiliation prevented Luna from even lifting her head. Her face was completely pale, and she covered her face and ran out crying. Julia, we're sisters. You're too harsh. Sam finally snapped out of it. He could only hurl one insult at me before he hurriedly chased after her. Once they left, the air seemed much fresher, but that burning gaze still followed me intently. Looking around, I spotted Eric sitting at the railing on the second floor. I wasn't sure if it was just my imagination. When our eyes met, that intense gaze mysteriously vanished. Seeing him about to leave, I quickly ran up to the second floor to stop him. Eric, wait! What are you doing here? Sam's gone chasing another woman. Not here. He frowned, seemingly displeased at being stopped, but he still patiently explained to me. I ran up gasping for breath, nodding firmly. I'm here for you. Since our families are bound to be united in marriage sooner or later, I choose you. Eric didn't react much after hearing this, but his tightly clenched hand betrayed the excitement in his heart. He slowly looked up at me, his deep eyes swirling with dark, indecipherable emotions. Why? Watching his tall figure, my eyes began to redden. Images of the last moments of my previous life flashed through my mind. Why are you crying? I didn't yell at you. A hint of panic flickered in Eric's usually indifferent eyes. He approached me hesitantly, his voice tinged with nervousness. I wiped away my tears, not planning to tell him everything just yet, pulling him back to sit down again. I'm fine. Just tell me if you agree or not. You know Sam's heart isn't with me. He only agreed to this marriage alliance for the sake of my family's wealth. So, I marry you. You protect me. And when the time comes, we split the estate half and half. How about that? Eric still didn't speak, his scrutinizing gaze sizing me up. He took a sip of tea before slowly starting to speak. Why trust me so much? Aren't you afraid I'll take all your family's fortune? After all, your family is wealthy and many are eyeing it greedily. His tone was neither hurried nor slow, as if the deal I proposed didn't interest him at all. To my surprise, this young master was actually breaking his norm and talking so much with me. Even with his father, he had never been this patient. A warmth welled up inside me. I smiled slightly, as bright as spring flowers. I'm not afraid. You're not that kind of person. You? Eric was momentarily stunned, then couldn't help but stare. Then he chuckled softly. All right. Having settled things with him, I was so excited that I grabbed his hand. Great. I'll come to you on Valentine's Day to get the certificate. Chapter 4. I remember the warmth of these hands. They are the hands that buried me in my previous life. For a while, Sam frequently came to my house. He never entered, just stood under my window flirting with Luna. They exchanged saccharine phrases like dear brother and sweet sister. My ears almost developed calluses from listening to them. I knew he was provoking me, but I had no interest in his childish antics. On Valentine's Day, he arrived at my doorstep in a brand new sports car. Luna, I've prepared a surprise for you this Valentine's Day. Let's go. He spoke deliberately loud enough for me to hear. Glancing my way, Luna, oblivious to his subtle cues, happily got into the car. I waited until his car had left before driving to Sam's house. Unexpectedly, I ran into them at the entrance. Sam leaned lazily against the door, giving me a disdainful glance. Julia finally couldn't sit still. Huh? I just took Luna away and here you are following. I thought you had more dignity, but it seems that was all. All right. Wait here. I'll take Luna up to my room to talk. He hummed triumphantly as he climbed the stairs, wrapping his arms around Luna. Luna, feigning shyness, pushed him gently. Stop it. Your sister is watching. Let her watch. The more aloof she acts, the more it pleases me to break her spirit. He scoffed. Their arrogance left me speechless. Had I known they were also here, I would have left home later. An hour later, Sam contentedly came downstairs, supporting a weak-kneed Luna. He looked around and didn't see me. His face gradually darkened, and he pushed Luna aside as he walked back into the living room. Dad, where's Julia? I told her to wait for me downstairs, and now she's gone. He was obviously in a bad mood. His face was sourer than ever. His father looked up from his newspaper, puzzled. Julia went to get married to your brother. Didn't you know? Julia's really not marrying me? He sprang up from the couch, eyes wide in shock, realizing the gravity of the situation. He turned and ran out. Sam, where are you rushing off to? Ouch! Luna tried to speak to him, but he forcefully pushed her to the ground. Eric and I returned hand in hand from getting our marriage certificate, just in time to run into Sam at the door. He abruptly stopped in his tracks, his gaze falling on the red marriage booklet in my hand. His face instantly changed, fire blazing in his eyes. Julia, why don't you like me anymore? In our last life, you wanted no one but me. Are you using my brother to make me jealous? His bizarre reference to our past lives left me unsure of how to explain to Eric. After all, who would believe such an incredible story about reincarnation? As I hesitated, Eric was the first to let go of my hand. He gave a bitter smile and turned away dejectedly. You two talk. I'll go upstairs. I knew he had misunderstood, but I needed to clarify things with Sam right then. Sam, we've both been reincarnated. You know what you did to me in our past life. How can you think I would still like you? What is there to like about you? Since you love Luna, I'll let you two be together in this life. Look, she's right behind you, staring at you. Why are you still bothering me? I thought I had made myself clear. But Sam just looked stunned for a moment. Then his lips curled into a knowing smile, his laughter light. So, you're jealous. You want to get back at me by using my brother. But you've chosen the wrong approach. I could never accept a woman who's been married before. Julia, missing out on me will be your biggest regret. I couldn't be bothered to argue any further. I walked past him and into the house. Chapter 5. Today, as Eric and I obtained our marriage certificate, Sam's father insisted that I stay for dinner. Midway through the meal, Sam arrived with Luna. They seemed to have been shopping, with Luna carrying large and small bags, all from luxury brands. Sam's father glanced at the triumphant look on Luna's face and his expression darkened as he put down his chopsticks with a snap. I'm full. After his father went upstairs to rest, Sam, acting as if nothing was amiss, sat down across from me, wrapping his arms around Luna. He began to open various jewelry boxes right in front of me. Stealing glances at me, he smirked mockingly. Julia, I told you you'd regret it. What's good about following a blockhead? He's not well regarded at the company. He's so poor he can't even afford to buy decent jewelry. Look, I just go out for a stroll and I can spend a fortune without blinking. That's the difference. Understand? Luna, congratulations on your engagement to Eric. I wish you both a lifetime of happiness. Luna, delighted, tried on the jewelry. Her expression was filled with contempt and mockery towards me. No matter what they said, it was as if they were just letting off steam to me. However, I couldn't ignore how this was affecting Eric. He had been keeping his head down, but I clearly saw a flicker of dark resolve in his eyes. I slid my hand under the table and gently took his clenched fist. He looked up puzzled, with a shimmer of emotion in his eyes. I smiled at him silently and calmly pulled out a share transfer agreement from my bag. Eric, I am transferring half of my family's shares to you. Please take good care of me for the rest of our lives. Eric suddenly looked up, his expression one of shock. Yet, he couldn't suppress a smile spreading across his lips. Julia, are you really willing to? Before Eric could finish, Sam abruptly stood up, his chair crashing to the ground with a jarring noise. Julia, are you serious? He stared at me, his pupils constricting. After a long moment, Sam finally regained his voice. It was as if he had conceded, and he said with a bitter smile, I admit defeat. Can we stop hurting each other now? I'll allow you to have children for me. Is that okay? His gaze shifted to Luna. A flicker of struggle passed through his eyes, but he made a painful decision. I'll also try to reduce my meetings with Luna, and try to be a competent husband. Luna had been tearful from the start, hearing that he would no longer even meet her. She couldn't hold back her tears anymore and cried out loud. In despair, she loudly questioned him. Sam, you don't want me anymore? Why are you different now? You're always distracted on our dates, even dismissive, and you only get close to me when your sister is around. Oh my God, you couldn't possibly like. Luna seemed to realize something, exclaiming in shock. Sam silenced her with a look. She followed his gaze to me, her eyes landing on the share transfer agreement in my hands. In an instant, she understood. She shot me a venomous glance, biting her lip in frustration before running out crying. This time, Sam didn't follow her. The atmosphere in the living room became inexplicably tense. He stepped forward and grasped my hand. A complex flicker of light briefly shone in his eyes. Julia, maybe I do like you. You can't give him those shares. His words left me stunned. He actually said he liked me? Cough. I'm full too. Eric coughed lightly, his gaze fixed on our intertwined hands. For a moment, his eyes darkened, tinged with self-mockery. He hurriedly stood up and left the living room, his silhouette blending into the night outside, appearing exceptionally despondent. Eric! In desperation, I forcefully pulled away from Sam's grasp, but the more I called out, the faster Eric walked away. Frustrated and angry, I turned to Sam and shouted at him. Listen well, I don't like you anymore. Stop deluding yourself. Julia, I know I went too far in our past life, But eventually I realized my feelings for you. And when I heard about your death in the psychiatric hospital, I wasn't. Sam continued to follow me persistently. I lost my patience and interrupted him. Enough. What's past is past. In this new life, I hope we do not interfere with each other. Now I'm just your sister-in-law. Chapter 6. I deliberately raised my voice on that last sentence. Eric, who was walking ahead, suddenly stopped in his tracks. His eyebrows relaxed gradually, and his eyes lit up. Julia? He tentatively reached out his hand toward me, his eyes shimmering with laughter. I smiled and placed my hand in his palm. Sam stood frozen in place, his complexion turning as pale as tissue paper, his eyes filled with confusion and anger. He muttered, Julia, don't you love me anymore? I didn't look back, instead walking with Eric to the garden for a stroll. Eric, listen carefully. Now that I've decided to marry you, I won't do anything to betray you. Keep this share transfer agreement. As for Sam, I can only say it's over. I don't like him anymore. I pushed the agreement back into his hands with a solemn promise. After a long moment, Eric finally squeezed my hand back. His lips curved slightly, his eyes and brows softening with affection. I believe you. After that night, our relationship progressed rapidly. I often went to his office to wait for him to finish work so we could eat together. On one occasion, I discovered a suspicious document in his office. Driven by curiosity, I opened the file. It contained evidence that Sam's mother had killed Eric's biological mother. The more I read, the more horrified I became. His aloof demeanor was all an act. He had been secretly orchestrating all the minor and major economic crises the company had faced in recent years. He was avenging his mother. Such deep scheming. What was I to him, then? The thought that I had hastily married him sent chills from head to toe. Click! The office door was pushed open. Eric stood at the doorway, his piercing eyes narrowing, emitting a fierce light. Snap! My hand went limp, and the documents fell to the floor. Eric, I didn't mean to peek. Under his intense gaze, I couldn't help but feel nervous. I lowered my head, unable to meet his eyes. After a moment, he took a few steps toward me and pulled me into his arms. His chin rested on the top of my head, and he sighed softly in resignation. So, you found out after all. Don't be afraid of me. I won't hurt you. I endured humiliation within the family all this time for the sake of avenging my mother. Julia, you're an exception. I didn't marry you for your family's shares. I just wanted the chance to take care of you. You probably don't realize how long I've liked you. He gently pushed me away, lowering his head, his gaze fixed on me. For a moment, his slightly hoarse voice trembled softly. Does next month's wedding still stand? Seeing the cautious look in his eyes, my thoughts spiraled, replaying all the moments of tenderness and care he had shown me recently. Those things couldn't be faked, no matter what kind of person he was. As long as he was sincere with me, it was enough. Of course, it does. I smiled and hugged him back. His body trembled briefly, and then he finally relaxed. He buried his head in the crook of my neck and murmured softly, Thank you, Julia. Across 2 lifetimes, I finally have you. His last words were so quiet that I didn't catch them clearly, but I didn't have time to ask, because he was already busy custom designing the most beautiful wedding dress in the world for me. Chapter 7. The wedding gown arrived at the hotel a day early, and Sam brought his friends along to join the fun. He casually flipped through the layers of the gown, the corner of his mouth curling with disdain. Street market quality, right? I've never even heard of this brand. Julia, I'm not saying anything bad, but marrying him will definitely lower your standard of living. Am I right, guys? He probably expected the room to erupt with laughter, but instead, his friends were staring at the gown, visibly shocked. Sam, wait a second. This wedding gown is a high-end custom piece from Italy, one of a kind worldwide. I heard it's worth 100 million. What? 100 million? You must be mistaken. My brother's the dull, quiet type who doesn't even own shares. There's no way he could afford a gown worth that much. Definitely a knockoff, trying to look rich. Sam laughed arrogantly, as if he had just heard the joke of the century, but his friend frowned and quickly pulled out his phone to double-check the details. Sam, It's real. Look. Your brother. What's his background? As soon as Sam saw the image on the phone, his expression shifted dramatically. He compared the photo to the gown multiple times, and the smirk on his lips vanished. He looked at Eric like he was a stranger. No way. He must have rented it. Eric and I ignored him and asked someone to carefully store the gown. I later heard that Sam went home that day and threw a massive fit. No one knew what Luna said to calm him down, but somehow, she managed to pacify him. I couldn't shake the unease in my heart. Those two were definitely up to something. On the wedding day, I remained vigilant, doing my best to avoid any contact with them. But Luna, being my father's illegitimate daughter, had a legitimate excuse to be there. She used her position as a family member to enter the bridal dressing room and help me put on the gown. Oh no, the wedding gown is damaged. Luna gasped apologetically, but the faint curve at the corner of her lips betrayed her satisfaction. I examined the gown and found that the delicate tulle around the bust had been sliced by something sharp, rendering it unwearable. The anger I had been suppressing erupted like wildfire. I was furious. I instinctively raised my hand, ready to slap her. You did this on purpose. Before I could act, Sam suddenly barged in, without asking any questions. He picked up his phone and started dialing. Hello, is this the Italian brand's office? My brother Eric rented a wedding dress, and it's been damaged. You should come and have him pay for it. What? He bought it outright? After hanging up, his face darkened, and he looked at me with an unreadable expression. Eric entered calmly, walking past them without sparing a glance, giving me a reassuring look. Julia, I prepared a backup wedding dress for you. Try it on. Right as he finished speaking, a staff member brought in an even more luxurious dress. This one was even more beautiful than the previous one. Another high-end custom piece. Why do you get all the good things? Luna glared at me venomously, clearly regretting her decisions. Originally, Eric had been her arranged marriage partner, but she had looked down on him and instead tried to manipulate Sam to go against me. Now, it was too late for regrets. So, you've been hiding your wealth all this time? Sam, feeling humiliated, lost his temper and swept everything off the dressing table, bottles, jars, and all onto the floor. He stormed up to me, face dark and full of rage, pointing his finger at me. No wonder you switched your feelings. Did you know all along? You're only after his money, aren't you? Sam, she's your sister-in-law. Eric shielded me behind him. For once, he was visibly angry and pushed Sam aside without hesitation. Sister-in-law? Julia originally loved me. She's my wife. Sam's fury ignited as he rolled up his sleeves, ready for a fight. Eric stood his ground without fear, his knuckles cracking ominously, as if he was ready for what was about to happen. Sensing trouble, I quickly stepped between them and pushed Sam out of the room. Sam, stop this nonsense. In my last life, you were the one who caused my death, and it was Eric who took care of my body. Tell me, why would I choose you over him? Sam froze, his eyes burned with resentment, and he shouted, How dare you say that? I'm the one who took care of your body in the last life. Impossible. I widened my eyes in shock, my heart pounding violently. Before my death, I was certain the one I saw was Eric. Chapter 8. Sam gave a bitter smile, his voice hoarse. After sending you to the psychiatric hospital in the last life, I realized that I had fallen in love with you. Unfortunately, I was abroad at that time negotiating a business deal, so I asked Luna to look after you. He paused briefly, his tone heavy, but by the time I returned, you had already taken your own life. Julia, I'm sorry for what I did to you in the last life. Please give me a chance to make it up to you. I turned to look at Luna in confusion. Sure enough, I caught the brief flash of panic on her face. Noticing my scrutinizing gaze, she quickly averted her eyes. Yes, it was Sam who returned to take care of your body. She stammered. Seeing her guilty expression, everything became clear to me. She must have bribed the doctors at the psychiatric hospital and tortured me to death before Sam returned. Today, I would rip off her fake mask once and for all. Looking around, I noticed the onlookers standing in stunned silence, bewildered by our talk of a previous life. I dismissed them, leaving only Eric behind. I didn't want him to overthink anything. Sam, do you think I lived comfortably in the psychiatric hospital and just decided to end my life on a whim? Sam was visibly shocked, but he lowered his head in guilt, murmuring, I'm sorry. I know my decision to confine you there hurt you. Shut up. You have no idea what I went through. Inside, I was force-fed medication, subjected to electric shocks, beaten, tied up, and tortured, all under Luna's orders. On the day I died, snow was falling heavily. She threw my body into a mass grave to be eaten by dogs. It was Eric who arrived to retrieve my body, pulling chunks of flesh from the dogs' mouths, piecing my remains together to give me a proper burial. And you claimed that you were the one who took care of my body? What body? Sam? Finally, my emotions erupted. I couldn't hold back the tears anymore, and I cried out all the pain and grief that had been bottled up. Julia, you have me. Eric calmly pulled me into his embrace. A few loose strands of hair fell over his forehead, obscuring his expression, but I could feel how tense his body was, as though he was struggling to contain something. I didn't let anyone hurt you. It was you. Luna, why did you do this? Sam frantically shook his head, trying to explain. Suddenly, a violent fury surged through him, and he grabbed Luna by the neck. Luna was terrified, her face drained of all color. He babbled incoherently, his words tumbling over each other without making sense. No, I didn't use a fake corpse to deceive you. No, I mean I didn't throw my sister's body to the dogs. No, it's not like that. Die. Luna, how could you be so vicious? Why? Sam instantly understood everything. The veins on his forehead bulged. His face twisted into a terrifying expression as he unleashed his fists and feet on Luna. She shielded her head, curled up on the floor, and finally let out a piercing scream. It's because I found out you had fallen in love with her. If she didn't die, I would never have had a chance. The air felt heavy, suffocating. The room fell into an eerie, deathly silence. After a brief pause, Sam lifted his foot again and delivered a powerful kick to Luna's stomach, sending her sprawling across the floor. Do you know who I ran into when I was abroad in my last life? Sam's cold eyes locked onto her. His deep voice echoed, emotionless and frigid. I met your former housekeeper. She said you've been a compulsive liar since childhood. To get your father's attention, you would always secretly pit yourself against Julia. Luna, didn't you say that Julia was always bullying you? Then explain why your housekeeper told me this? I didn't believe it before, but now I finally understand. The joke has always been on me. You've been manipulating me like a fool. The more he spoke, the darker his face became, his anger boiling over like a storm. Luna lay on the ground, her face as pale as paper. Her eyes widened in panic, and her pupils dilated with fear. She opened her mouth, desperate to defend herself, but no words came. I couldn't bear to watch this farce any longer. Just as I was about to tell Eric to kick them both out, I felt the hand around my waist abruptly loosen. Eric's face turned pale, and he coughed up a mouthful of blood. Ugh. I spun around, alarmed. The gruesome scene before me caused my pupils to contract sharply. Eric! He barely managed a weak smile before collapsing into my arms. Chaos erupted. Eric was rushed to the hospital for emergency treatment. The doctor informed us that he had been poisoned but was fortunate to have received timely treatment, so his life was not in immediate danger. Upon hearing this, I immediately reported it to the police. After an investigation, the police confirmed that the person who had poisoned Eric was Sam. You ungrateful son. Was it really you? Chapter 9. Sam's father was so furious that he almost passed out. Sam chuckled lightly, his tone indifferent and careless. So what if it was me? My brother's just a useless waste. If he dies, he dies. I don't believe you'd actually turn against your own son for the sake of that insignificant nobody. Dad. Eric's nothing but an illegitimate child. Are you really going to do this? Are you being fair to my mom? Even Sam's devoutly religious mother had come today. She stood among the crowd, and upon hearing his words, she lowered her head in shame. Sam's father, consumed with rage, slapped him hard across the face. You bastard! Who told you Eric is an illegitimate child? Looking at Eric lying unconscious in the intensive care unit, I finally understood how difficult his life had been all these years. No wonder he had such a withdrawn and quiet personality. It was his way of protecting himself. A surge of fury ignited within me, and I rushed forward, delivering a slap across Sam's face. Grabbing his collar, I gritted my teeth and said, "Sam, you bastard, your mother is the mistress. Strictly speaking, you're the illegitimate child. Back then, Eric's mother kindly took your mother in as a housemaid, but she seduced your father and secretly poisoned Eric's mother to death in the hospital just to take her place." These were all details I had read in the documents. Sam froze as if he had been turned to stone, unable to move. His face was blank, and his voice trembled. "Dad, is she telling the truth?" Sam's father was stunned that I knew the truth from back then, clearly caught off guard, but faced with Sam's questioning gaze, he nodded. "Mom?" Sam couldn't accept the truth and turned his desperate gaze to his mother, hoping for denial. But Sam's mother had already broken down into tears, sobbing uncontrollably. The prayer beads in her hands snapped, and the beads fell to the ground, bouncing with soft, crisp sounds. "It's true, I lost my mind back then and did something unforgivable. For all these years, I've lived in repentance, eating vegetarian meals and chanting prayers. But nothing can absolve my sins. My son, we are the ones who owe the debt. You've lost your way." As the truth came crashing down, Sam leaned against the cold wall and slowly slid to the ground. He mumbled to himself, his words barely audible. "Brother, I'm sorry." Sam stayed at the entrance of the ICU all night. It wasn't until early the next morning, when Eric was transferred to a regular ward, that he let out a long breath of relief. After this incident, his father was thoroughly disappointed in him. He stripped Sam of all his positions and powers within the company and officially handed the company over to Eric. Sam's mother, knowing she was at fault, didn't dare raise any objections. She quietly stayed in the family's old residence, not setting foot outside. This development left Luna in a panic. She arranged multiple meetings with Sam, trying to persuade him with soft words and coaxing tones. "Your dad is too biased. How could he take away all your power in the company? You're part of the family. At least half of the company should be yours. Luna, I've told you many times, stop trying to stir up trouble. Even if the company were solely mine, I wouldn't marry a woman as venomous as you." Sam's disgust for her had reached its peak. He had no desire to say another word to her. "Sam, if you won't marry me, who else can you marry? If you won't fight for it, then I will." Chapter 10. Luna stomped her foot in frustration. Since Eric had just recovered from his illness, I stayed at the old family residence to take care of him day and night. After many days of exhaustion, I fell asleep with my head resting by his bedside. In a haze, I vaguely heard the sounds of arguing and someone calling for help. I tried to open my eyes, but no matter how much I struggled, I couldn't wake up. The next morning, someone shook me awake. The first thing I saw was Luna's fake, deceitful face. "Sister, even if taking care of Eric was tiring, you shouldn't have let your resentment drive you to kill his parents." Her words snapped me awake instantly. I looked around and saw Sam's parents lying in a pool of blood. In my hands was a blood-soaked knife. "Ah!" I screamed in horror and quickly threw the knife to the ground. The police arrived shortly after and took me away, claiming they had caught me red-handed. I was officially detained. "Julia, don't worry. We'll get you out of here," Eric and Sam said in unison when they came to visit me. They both believed in my innocence. After a month of investigation, the real culprit was finally found, Luna. The surveillance footage from the old residence that had been destroyed that night was finally restored. The video revealed that Luna had bribed a servant in the house to drug our food with sleeping pills that evening. She used the opportunity to coerce Sam's father into transferring his shares to her. When he refused, she killed him and framed me. With the evidence clear, I was declared innocent and released. Unfortunately, Luna had received an early warning and had already fled. The night I returned to the old residence, she was hiding in my bathroom. As I prepared to take a shower, she suddenly burst out, wielding a knife and charging toward me. Her face was cold and grim, with a trace of indescribable malice. "I'm going to kill you. Both brothers are so captivated by you. Why? What makes you better than me?" I was forced into the corner, with no way out. Just as the knife was about to strike, Eric kicked down the door and shielded me from the blow. Luna, the one who deserves death the most is you. Hearing the commotion, Sam quickly rushed in. Seeing what was happening in the room, he reacted swiftly, restraining Luna within moments and snatching the knife from her hand. Luna, I did this for you. You can't hand me over to the police. When the police arrived, Luna panicked, desperately pleading with Sam. But in the end, she was still taken away by the police. Luna was sentenced to death. On the day of her execution, she requested to see me. It hadn't been long, but the once proud long hair she flaunted had been cut short, and she looked so worn and haggard that she appeared more than a decade older. Seated in the visitation room, she still held her head high. A mocking smirk curled at the corner of her lips. In the last life, you died early. Do you want to know what happened after your death? She deliberately paused for a long time, only continuing when she saw the confusion on my face. Sam committed suicide holding your fake corpse. Before he died, he used his soul to make a deal with the deity, exchanging his eternal damnation for your rebirth. He wanted a second chance to start over with you. Haha. He sacrificed his eternal rest for your rebirth, and this life is his last one. But what did he gain in the end? Ha ha ha. The sound of the execution gunshot echoed, and I suddenly broke into a cold sweat. I quickly left the prison and saw Sam waiting at the gate. He walked up to me, stopping in front of me, and smiled faintly, though a hint of sorrow flickered in his eyes. Do we still have a chance? No. I looked up, my expression complicated, and decisively shook my head under his hopeful gaze. I see. Chapter 11. He turned around, his shoulders trembling slightly. The gentle breeze carried his slightly regretful voice to my ears. If, in this life, I hadn't kept testing you, would you have looked at me a little more? I didn't answer him. That same day, he boarded a plane and left the country. I never saw him again. 3 months later, Eric's stab wound had fully healed. I finally had the chance to question him. Tell me, were you deliberately poisoned on our wedding day? With the caution he had developed over the years, it was impossible for him not to know that the drinks had been tampered with. Eric smiled warmly and pulled me into his arms. He affectionately tapped the tip of my nose. I knew I couldn't hide it from you. It was my chance to completely take Sam down because the company is my mother's legacy, and I couldn't just hand it over to someone else. Understanding his intentions, I nodded and smiled without saying anything further. In truth, I also knew that he had been reborn, just like me, but it was something we silently agreed never to bring up. For the rest of our lives, we stayed together until old age,